We're going to have some fun with arrays in this lesson. So we're going to create a couple arrays. We're going to join them together. We're going to add one array into another array. We're going to try out the array prototype to apply, which will bring both of those arrays together as one array. And then we can also push new content into it, showing you the differences between delete, how to clear out all of the content of the array using the length, and then also splicing the content within the array to replace it and remove it. So that's all coming up. So this lesson we've got going to create a couple arrays, and then we'll merge those arrays together, and we'll also delete some items from the arrays. So the arrays, as we know, can contain multiple values, so they can have a string value, they can have several string values, they can have numbers, they can have booleans. So this is our first array that we're creating. And let's create a second array and slightly alter some of the content that's contained in there and maybe add a little bit more extra content. And I'll remove out some other content that's in there. So that way we get a couple different arrays. Got to give them different names as well. And if we want to push and bring those arrays together, so there's a number of different ways that you can do that with JavaScript. And let's say we want to even create a third array with two arrays. So concat is used to merge two arrays together. So we can take the results from the first array, and using the concat keyword, we can merge to the second array. And that will result in providing a third array with the set of values from the first two. And the order is that the first one, so the first one that we're adding and the second one that we're concatenating together is going to be the second array. So even if you were to concatenate it twice, that would add in that second array twice to the first array. So what happens if we do the first array and then do the second array? We see that we get this type of result where we've got the first set of data from the first array, second set of data from the second, or again, first set of data from the first array, and then we've got the second set of data from the second array. You can also push one array into another. So if I wanted to add and update to array 2 and add in the value of array 1, so let's do that, where we're pushing array 1 into array 2. And the result is going to be an update of the array 2, where we're going to contain the first array, but we're also going to contain the second array, but it's going to be contained as an array within the array. So we don't necessarily want that, where we might want to take the array out and use the push apply in order to bring them together so that they're both on that same route where they've got using all the same index values. And so what push apply does is it allows us to add one array to the other. And right now we still only have the value for the second array. So we need to structure it that we're using the array prototype, and we're taking the value of the first array and then the value of the second array to bring them together. And the result for the second array will still be the same, but if we look at the result for the first array, that's going to now have a combination of the values of the first array and the second array. So let's just add in a string for first so that we can easily identify them better within the content that's being output. So the second array stays the same when we use the apply prototype, but the first one does change, and it has the second array added into the first array. So that's going to be different than if we just pushed it in, because if we were to just push it in, and we'll try that one more time where we've got the array 2, and we'll push in the array 1 values, and we'll log out the result of array 2. So that's going to have the array 2, but it's also then going to contain the array 1 contents within it. So it's a second array within the first array, and because we're pushing that value in, I'm going to move this above before we merge the two in. So that will give us that second array, and it will still keep that first array with a value of 8. So now if we log out the results of array, we've got a second array that's contained within there, but notice that we've made some updates to the second array, and this is once again linking to the memory location of the second array, so it's still providing all of the data that's contained within the second array. So if we were to update array 2, and if we were to add to it, so add a new item into it, and if we've got array 1, and let's add, and we'll do it array 1 new as well. Let's see what now we have for the results of array 1 and array 2. And we can also log out array 3 as well. So the results for array 1 are coming from line 14. So that's going to be the original array, but then it's got the first array added in there. So these are actually going to be matching, and when we're updating array 1, we're going to see that we get that value there being added into it. So we've got an array within an array within an array, and it keeps going deep within those arrays. So we've nested the array within itself, and that's what's created this type of effect where now whenever we're adding to it, we're seeing those values being added into all of those arrays. So that one is just going to go on indefinitely within itself. The second array 2, because array 2 is actually nested within array 1, we've got array 1 within array 2. That's where we're still getting that value there of all of those values for the array 1, because again, it's tied to that value for array 1. So we're going to have those arrays nested within themselves, and we can continuously go down the nested arrays because it's actually nested within itself. And then the last one still remains the same, so array 3 still remains the same, and that doesn't get affected because it's not tied to any of the other arrays. So how about we clear up some of the arrays, where we want to clear up array number 1 because there is a problem here that we've nested array 1 within itself, so it's going to continue to go deep, so we need to correct that. So let's make a selection of that array. And what happens if we take array 2, item with the index number of 7, we delete that item from array number 2. What is going to be the result for array number 2? So now we've removed it. We've removed array number 1 from array number 2. So array number 1 still stays the same. We've got it nested within itself still. But within array number 2, we've removed that item out, so we don't have anything for index value number 7, and that's actually essentially just going to be undefined because it's just blank because we did a delete. If we want to actually clear the contents of an array, we can do that as well. And actually, let's try one more where we're delete from array number 1 the item with index number of 12. So that just provides an empty slot there for the index value when we use delete. So delete doesn't necessarily change the number of items that are within the array. So the length of these arrays is still going to be the same, but the delete is able to clear out a single item using its index value from the array. So if you don't want to remove the item, you can use a splice instead of delete to delete an item from an array. And what the delete does is it just, instead of removing the item, it just replaces it. So it stays within the array, that item, but it just replaces it with an empty value. So let's show you how you can clear out contents of an array. So if we want to just completely remove everything from the array, we can do an array 1 equals 0. So that will empty the array. We know that also with arrays that if we assign a value, so if we do a const and set array 4 to equal array 1, that those will always be the same. But right now, if we have array number 4, because once again it's tied to that memory location, that once we clear out array number 1, it's also going to affect array number 4 because they're tied together. If we use the splice, that allows us to remove items from the array and replace it. So if instead of the delete, we'll use the splice instead. So selecting under array number 1, and then we use the splice method. So this changes the contents of array by removing and replacing existing elements that are within the array. And the parameters, and this is actually done in place, so we need to have the start position, which in this case is going to be 12, the number of items that we want to delete. So let's set that to 1, and then we can also replace it with a new value if we want. So let's go back to see what we've got for the item. And now number 11 has simply been removed out. We can replace it with a string removed, and that way we can see that that value has been replaced with the word removed. We can also have multiple items in there, so you just have to comma separate them, and we can do second item in there, and that will add them and shift the remaining content to over 1. So that's how you can use splice instead of delete in order to clean up your arrays. If we just do a splice, so let's do array splice, and we don't include a second number, so that will splice out the contents of the array starting at that with the remaining. So because we spliced from index value 7, so everything 7 and onwards was removed, and that automatically gives us a length of 7 because arrays are 0 based. So if we were to splice with 3, what do you think the length will be of that array? And if you said 3, you're correct. The length is going to be 3 because it's going to splice at the starting point of 0 of that index value and remove out everything past that. So you can include a number, or you don't have to include a number. So this is how many items you want to delete. So if you want to delete out 3 items, that will just remove out 3 items starting at position index 3 and remove out the next 3 items. And you've got some options there for splicing and removing those items from the array. So go ahead and try it out and add the arrays together and also update some of the array content using the various methods that we've discussed.